Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Findmypast Fridays Live. My name is Liam, and I work in the customer support team here at Findmypast. And as always, it is my pleasure to be here with you on another Friday. As always, let us know in the comments, first of all, that you can hear and see me, and let us know where you're coming in from. Give us a wee weather report on where you are. What are you up to this weekend? Do let us know in the comments. I am flying solo today. It is a very busy time for people in the usual team that would help out on the comments on one of these sessions today. So I am on my own. So I will trust you all to behave yourselves in the comments. If I will obviously be keeping an eye on the comments myself, but if I do miss anything, if there's anything going on, do feel free just to spam the comments, try and get my attention, as I say, and I will do my best to keep up to date with the links as well. So let's have a look. Who have we got coming in? We have got Gillian from sunny Edinburgh. So very jealous that you've got the sun over in Edinburgh, Gillian. I am in Dundee, as you may know, and it has been very dull today. It was raining first thing this morning, but it's been dry ever since. So fingers crossed we get a bit better of a weekend ahead of us. Andrew, dry and warm, but overcast now in Lancashire. Had a couple of showers a couple hours ago. Yeah, much and such the same in Dundee, as I'm saying as well, Andrew. So fingers crossed it brightens up for us both soon. Andrea from windy and cloudy Stoke-on-Trent. We've got rain in Wexford with Sarah. Blustery North Wales, Janet. Let's have a look. Karen has already been doing her family history on Friday. She's been looking at the India Wills. Lovely, good stuff. Who have we got? We've got Shirley on YouTube from sunny Cambridgeshire, waiting for the rain. As long as you've got sun for a little bit, as I say, you're doing better than us anyway. Kim Drisley, West Yorkshire. We've got Will White, 109 Fahrenheit in Dallas today. Never been sure on how to convert the Fahrenheit into Celsius, but I'm assuming that is very, very hot. That sounds very hot to me anyway. So if anyone can do the conversion, do let us know so I can get a gauge. But as I say, I know from speaking to Jen that is very hot, I would say. We've got Kathy from sunny New Jersey, Gina Dull in Lancashire. Yeah, a lot of more or less the same by the sound of things. I'm glad I'm not alone anyway, and it being quite dull and overcast here. But as I say, fingers crossed the sun is with us all soon and we can enjoy a good weekend. So we are, of course, here to talk about the new records, but we do obviously have a question of the week as well. As I was typing this one into the banner that I'm about to put on screen, I started thinking that maybe this one has already been asked, but it kind of ties into what I'm going to speak about later. So we'll run with it anyway. Let's just pretend you've not answered this before, if it has been asked before, as I say. But I'll pop that on screen for you before we go any further. So the question of the week is, have you ever taken a holiday based on your family history, whether it's been going to visit a place your ancestors are from, maybe you've read about holiday locations from a certain time period and fancied one yourself, for example. So let us know if you've ever gone anywhere based on your family history, whether you're going to do family history or just wanted to see where your ancestors were from. Let us know in the comments. And as I say, if it has been asked, just pretend it hasn't. We will crack on as usual. We've got some answers for the Celsius question. Thank you very much, Karen. 42 degrees, more precisely 42.7 degrees. Yeah, insanely hot. I was right enough in saying that it was going to be hot. I just didn't know how hot. But as I've said before, I tap out at about 25 degrees Celsius. So up to 42, 43, way too hot for me. So I hope anyone with similar weather is doing their best to survive and stay cool, whatever you need to do. But I know a lot of people in America always have air conditioning, and I guess that's why it's a foreign concept to me in Dundee. No real need for air conditioning here, but as I say, I know a lot of people over there will have air conditioning, so hope that is cranked up to the max and we will get you through the next hour or so. So we'll have a look at the new records. I'm going to pop them on screen at the moment, and I'm going to go full screen, so I will lose sight of the comments for a little while here. So as I say, make sure you're behaving yourselves, and I will come back and make sure I've not missed anything major when I come back. So let's have a look. So we've got new records this week. We've got 3 new additions, all updates to existing collections. They are the Hertfordshire Parish Records. The updates, as I say, they are already on site, but we've got quite large updates to all 3 of them there. So we have over 231,000 new baptisms from 1433 to 1950. over 86,000 new marriages from 1433 to 1949, and over 300,000 new burials from 1459 to 1959. So, as I say, quite sizable updates to these record sets. So, a very good week to have ancestors in Herefordshire. Herefordshire is one of those places which isn't actually that hard to pronounce, but the way my accent is, I tend to kind of roll my R's a bit. So when a word has as many R's in quick succession as that, I kind of struggle to say it. So I'll be keeping the use of that place name to a minimum as much as I can, obviously, when we're talking about 3 new record sets from that county. So you may know that we obviously do the blog every week alongside the new records, and I'm flying solo, as I said, so I've already forgotten to put the link to the blog in the comments. I'll pop that in for yourselves there now. So yeah, we do the blog every week alongside the email that goes out and of course the sessions today. You may notice if you've already read the blog that it was actually myself that wrote the blog this week. As Ellie alluded to a couple of weeks ago, I've started spending 1 day a week with the lovely people in the marketing team. And one of the tasks that I've been given is to write the blog for the new records. So I was speaking to Daisy, who usually did the blog before. She still proofreads it and makes quite a few edits, shall we say, because I am still getting to grips with it, but I do appreciate her help. But I was speaking to her one day and I was saying that usually I would have relied quite heavily on the blog when I was doing a Friday Live, just for things like the numbers, the dates, any fun, interesting finds from the new records. But now that I'm doing the blog and the Friday Live, the pressure is really on. I've had to be doing all of that myself. So I was having a look in these new records, as I always do, of course, but just trying to find something interesting for the blog and that I could maybe use on the live session as well. And one person that I came across was this gentleman by the name of David Garrick. This is a portrait of David Garrick by Thomas Gainsborough from the National Portrait Gallery in London. I will admit this was the first I'd heard of David Garrick. I found a very handy Wikipedia article on famous people from Herefordshire, and he was one that I just happened to be able to find in the new records. But does anyone come across David Garrick before? Does anyone know maybe why he is of note or why we'd be speaking about him? Is that a name that rings a bell with anyone? Yeah, Matthew's a lot wrong along the right lines. He was, yes, David Garrick was quite a famous of his time in the kind of 18th century, quite a famous theatre producer, screenwriter, playwright, and an actor as well. A lot of people get in that as well in the Garrick Theatre. Yeah, not somewhere I'd heard of before I started doing this research. But yeah, he is, as I say, quite a famous of his time actor, mostly known for an actor. But as I say, he was a playwright and later a theatre manager, theatre producer as well. And he is a famous person from Herefordshire, which I Googled, and apparently they are called Herfordians, I believe you would pronounce it. I don't know why, but I really like knowing what people from a certain area are from. Like people from Dundee are Dundonians or Glaswegians, Londoners, things like that. Mancunians is a good one as well, I really like. So if you've got any fun ones that I might not know, feel free to put them in the comments as well, because it's just a nice little thing that I like to know. So he's a famous Herfordian. You'll see I use that in the blog as well. I could not miss the chance to use that. But he is born in Hereford, so this is his parish baptism record from the new editions. He was baptised on the 28th of February 1717 in Hereford itself. And you can see we've got his parents' names on the right-hand side of that as well, as you would expect on a parish baptism record as well. So as I say, this was the first I'd heard of David Garrick. So this was my rabbit hole of the week, was finding out more about David Garrick, who he was, because he was quite, as I say, a famous in his field of the time. There's a lot online about him, but I was having a look at other records to see where else he would appear. Obviously, with him being a famous actor, famous playwright, there are heaps of newspaper articles, a lot about him, the plays he produced, the plays he acted in, for example, but also obviously appears in things like the parish baptisms and also the parish burials as well. This one, as you'll notice, is not from the Herefordshire collection. This one was actually from Westminster Abbey. So another fun Wikipedia article that I spent some time delving into this week was people who are interred in Westminster Abbey. And not a very long article, actually. Not many people interred in there, and a lot of them do tend to be sort of more medieval times. So David Garrick, maybe even one of the sort of more recent people to be interred in Westminster Abbey. And it sounds strange because, as I say, he lived such an extravagant and successful life and career, but it was quite morbidly his death I was focusing on quite heavily. There was a lot of information about his death and his burial, of course, including a lot in the newspapers as well, although he appeared a lot as a playwright, as an actor. A lot of good stuff in the papers about his death as well. So first of all, I found an obituary in the Scots magazine. Now, there was a lot of obituaries in different newspapers. I think even this one probably appeared in other newspapers as well, as is quite common. Of course, we've seen that before, that one obituary was written and kind of spread across papers up and down the country, as this one was from Scotland, of course, the Scots magazine. And it was massive, really, really long. I think it would probably be at least a full column, if not more, by the time you added the two of them together. So I've not included it all, but I have included a few snippets here. So I think maybe last time I was live, I mentioned that Jen had done a session with a few people within Findmypast on just genealogy, different methodologies, and different angles that people could take. And one of the exercises that we did as part of that session was Jen put a journal article on the screen, and we were to start recording bits of information that we could take, whether it was like key facts about the person, hints that we could use for the next steps in our research, or just little things that you would learn about the person from. That was a journal article, but the same would apply to this obituary. As I say, it was a massive long obituary. I know not everybody has the same. They are sometimes quite short, just quite brief. But it's a really good exercise to do, actually. I certainly learned a lot from that whole session, but the exercise in general, and definitely have started looking at records like this a little bit differently since doing that as well. So when you look at just that first kind of section that I've popped in the left-hand side there, you've obviously got the usual information, his name, how old he was when he died, where he was born. But then you also go into a little bit more detail about his father being a French refugee and captain of a troop of horses. You've got the fact that David was intended for the bar, entered into an honourable society of Lincolnton, and also things like he was for some time under the employment of a wine merchant. Things that, especially when we're talking about 18th century, if it was more recent, of course, or 19th century, you would maybe be getting that sort of information from something like a census. But things like the fact he was in the employment of a wine merchant, certainly from the research I was doing on the internet of him, that never came up. Quite a minor detail perhaps, but an interesting one nonetheless. And as I say, I would definitely recommend doing a sort of exercise like this. Even if you wanted to use that one, you've got the date of the paper on there in January 1779. It's a really good, as I say, I certainly have looked at obituaries, journals in a different way since doing that. So I would recommend somebody doing that as well. And then on the right-hand side, that was the final paragraph of the obituary as well. I just like the fact that the one on the left-hand side went into great detail about his life, his career, the key information, but then it finishes up with a sort of personal note, a personal description about the man himself, saying as a companion, he was so agreeable, witty, and facetious that his company was coveted by and gave high entertainment to the greatest names in this country. So, as I say, obviously a guy who is held in quite high regard, and obviously details about his career, as I say, but a little bit about the man himself is always nice to see in an obituary. And as I say, there was so much in the newspapers about his death, whether it was things like the obituary or also the funeral procession itself. As I mentioned, he was interred in Westminster Abbey, and this is an article that was about the funeral itself. It went into a lot of detail as well, things about how many horse carriages there were, which noblemen and high-ranking officials there were present there. But the final line said that it is said His Majesty has already made an offer to Mr. Garrick's relations to erect a monument to him at his own expense to be placed in Westminster Abbey. So that was obviously quite intriguing. I knew he was interred in Westminster Abbey, but that was quite interesting to see. So I went online and had a look, and lo and behold, that monument did indeed take place. This is the marble monument, which is in what's called Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey, and it is of David Garrick. That is him standing high up there, intended to be him sort of taking a bow through the curtain at the end of a performance. And then the two figures underneath, they represent the like comedy and tragedy. You know, you get the old masks when one's laughing, one's kind of frowning, crying. those are the masks that those two people are holding, because he was an actor, but he didn't seem to specialize in one or the other. He seemed to be quite famed for his ability to balance both roles and play both roles depending on the play itself. And then you've got a lovely inscription underneath that as well. And going back to the session that Jen ran, I feel like I'm going to need to talk her into doing something like this with you, because as I say, I learned quite a lot and have definitely been doing research in a different way since that session. So she was talking about other sources and where else you could look for more about people, including things that are on the internet, of course. And one that I found myself in the context of David Garrick was online auction websites, whether it's your eBays or like an auctioneer like a Sotheby's or Bonhams, as the case was for David Garrick. So there are a few things of David Garrick's or relating to David Garrick that had been sold through that auctioneers, which is nice to see as well. And I've got a couple to show you here. So this was one which I thought was really cool. This was a collection of his possessions that had been entrusted to his wife after he passed. As you can see, you've got things like a glove, a couple badges, perhaps scripts, illustrations, posters for plays that he was in or part of in one way or another. Just as I say, especially when you consider the time period, really cool to see some of his actual possessions there as well. Couldn't see who it sold to or how much it sold to. That would be the interesting part, I suppose. And if you are interested in any David Garrick memorabilia, you'll be glad to know that that does also exist as well. This was a figure that I found of David Garrick portraying Richard III, which it says circa 1775. I'm assuming there's meaning that's when the figure was from. I'm not sure if it's been restored or what's happened, but I was amazed at the condition it was in. And as I say, just a nice little kind of thing, an extra little thing to have a look into as well, especially if you do have any ancestors who were in the theatre, were artists, were celebrities of their time, so to speak. So a nice little thing to find as well. Bear with me a second. So those are the new records. So this is the, as I say, Herefordshire baptisms, marriages and burials update. In case you're late joining and missed the first couple of slides, the link to the blog is further up the comments for you as well to delve into them a little bit more. But of course, we do have new newspapers online as well. Part of the reason I've been talking about David Garrick for so long is that I've been absolutely dreading this next slide. And when you look at the names of the three new newspapers, you will see why. They are all Welsh titles, of course, but they are all actually published in the Welsh language as well. So obviously the titles are in Welsh. I did ask Ellie for help with pronunciation on these. She did send me a voice note where she kind of tried to talk me through how to say them. But as I say, I struggle to say the word Herefordshire. So if you think I've got any chance in saying these Welsh sounds where you need to roll your R's and all different sounds, totally alien to me, could not get my head around it. Even the third one, Ellie herself wasn't entirely sure on the pronunciation of, so I was certainly not going to have a chance. Ellie is on holiday today, but next time she hosts a session, you'll need to ask her to try and read these out for you to see how they should actually be said. But as I say, I'm not going to embarrass myself in giving an attempt today. But those are the three new titles. A lot of years covered by the three different titles in their own right as well. As I say, they are all in Welsh language, so you might need a little bit of help from Google Translate if you are having a look in those records. But if you don't speak Welsh or don't have ancestors in Welsh, fear not, we do also have a few updated titles from up and down the UK as well. We've got things like the Holborn and Finsbury Guardian, the Nelson Leader from Lancashire, the St Pancras Guardian and Camden and Kentish Towns, Thompson's Weekly News, which was a Dundee title as well. So still plenty to get into, as I say, if you don't speak Welsh or don't have ancestors in Welsh. And as I say, next time Ellie is on here, definitely ask her to give those pronunciations a go, particularly the third one. I'm keen to know if she's worked that one out or not, because as I say, she wasn't sure herself when I was trying to get information from her. So be interesting to know. But yeah, those are the new titles and updated titles, bringing to a close the new records on the website. So I will take my slides off and we'll have a look at the comment as well. Let's see, I can see already got a lot of question of the weeks coming in too, so I will be sure to keep hold of them as well. Let's have a look and see. What have we got? Anya saying New Delhi. Yeah, of course, today was the one day that she's taken off. She couldn't do the comments for me, and she's not here to give the pronunciations a go. If she was doing the comments, I'd probably have dragged her into the stream just so she could actually give those pronunciations a go for us as well. But alas, as I say, she is on some well-deserved annual leave. And also saying that her partner bought her a book that my direct ancestor was involved with on eBay. Always a good place to have a wee look. Definitely, as I say, it's an interesting thing to do, I think, having a look on eBay, whether it's directly to do with your ancestor, as that book was, or something from a company they worked for, or different things like that. Again, this is the last time we'll talk about the session Jen did with us, but she was talking about one of her ancestors who was quite a famous like iron manufacturer and made like pots and pans, and she's seen quite a few of his pots and pans on eBay as well, which would be really cool as well when it's, as I say, your ancestor's actual company that made them too. So interesting stuff, definitely worth a look on eBay. And Karen said, I feel like I'm going to need more information on this, Karen. Your cousin bought our family photo album on eBay. Very interesting. As I say, eBay is full of wonders. You never know what you're going to find in an afternoon on eBay. Some really cool stuff, all weird and wonderful stuff as well. Let's see, what else have we got? Lynn, as we're talking about obituaries, she found an obituary of her 2 times great-grandfather in the Medicine Hat News, June 19th, 1852. He lived and died in Yorkshire, England. His son lived in Redcliffe, which is just outside Medicine Hat. Very cool. I do like a good obituary, as I say. I like, you get the ones where it's just name, date of death, maybe where they died or where they were from. I like the really long ones. So hopefully there's some good information in there for you, Lynn, about your ancestor from there. Let's see. So we'll do some question of the week answers before we move on to our next segment. It is sort of related to our next segment as well, but we'll get onto that after we've had a look at a few. So let's have a look and see. So Karen did a big trip to China, Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, my husband and son's family places in 2006. Going to Norfolk soon, where some of my family are from. Very cool. China, Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand is definitely a good trip to be able to do some family history on as well when you've got relatives in there as well. So very cool indeed, Karen. Hope that was a good trip. I know quite a few people have been to like Malaysia, Thailand, Southeast Asia, but I don't think I know anyone that's been to China or Singapore. I think my granddad maybe spent some time in Singapore back in the day, but very, very cool indeed. Let's see. So Annie was away last time we were on because she was away meeting with some cousins discovered thanks to DNA. Very nice. We met in a town that our shared ancestors came from, Musselburgh near Edinburgh. Nice. Wonderful people. We plan on meeting again soon. That is definitely a family history related trip that I was looking for. Very cool. And nice to meet some new relatives based on family history and DNA as well. Really, really cool. Let's see, we've got Janet went on a coach holiday to Suffolk and spent a few hours at Lavenham, where my ancestors lived pre-1850. Very cool. Really nice to be able to go to places that your ancestors were from. As I've mentioned before, my grandfather was from Donegal in Ireland, and that is a place that I have been to, and probably not a place I would have been to if my grandfather hadn't actually been there. But absolutely lovely place. Really, really liked it. Lovely scenery, lovely people. Lovely pubs as well, of course, good pint of Guinness. So, as I say, nice to get an excuse to go somewhere new that, as I say, you perhaps would not have gone to otherwise. So, very, very nice. Nicole unknowingly went when she was a kid. They'd gone caravanning and went to a place like Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, and Wales. Now, in family history, I discovered that both sides of my family came from those places. Very nice, and an entire accent as well, Nicole. So now that you know, now that you've got that knowledge, you'll need to go back and see exactly where they were from and take some photographs as well, which is always nice to have. Wendy has been to Norfolk and Suffolk small towns, as many ancestors immigrated to the New World in 1635, 1645. Puritans, also Wiltshire, love visiting. Very nice. I'm glad you enjoyed your time in that part of the country as well. Kim saying her youngest daughter has an affinity for North Wales, so we've holidayed there since 2017. Very nice, North Wales. Again, if only Ellie was here, she'd be able to tell you all about North Wales as well. I think that's where Ellie's from, isn't it? North Wales. So she would very much enjoy that comment as well. Matthew is not long back from a short break in Chichester, visiting the WSRO. Spent time in Sussex and Kent in the past as they are key research areas. Also got a lot of ancestors in Dorset, Lincolnshire and Northants, but not been to those yet. So we'll definitely get those on the list for you as well, Matthew. It'd be nice to, as I say, maybe even pick up a thing or two, learn some more about the family that actually came from there. Let's see. Andrew going quite far afield here as well. Ancestors from Sable Island, went to Nova Scotia to see where her family lived. Locals very happy to see us. US folk were staying home in 2006. Still have my passport archives in Halifax. Very nice little memento to have as well. And nice from the locals as well. I feel like people do appreciate sometimes when you get people for family history reasons coming over to see their sort of ancestral home or somewhere where some of their ancestors lived anyway. So nice that you got a warm welcome there as well. And we've got Pickles saying that he spent 2 holidays in Lincolnshire, learning more about my Warrington ancestors. This year, one of my work colleagues spent her holiday in and around and was tasked with sending me some photographs of the castle, since rumour has it one of my Warrington ancestors was killed at the siege of Skipton Castle a few centuries back. Very interesting. I like that you got them to take photographs for you as well. If you know someone's going somewhere where you've got links to, definitely ask for photographs as well. I'm sure they will be more than happy to oblige. And that is a family rumour which would be very, very interesting to confirm as well, Pickles. So you'll need to keep us up to date on that one when you got more information too. And we'll do a couple more as well. We've got Victoria went to Stratford upon Avon only recently on the way to visiting family. Very nice. Not a part of the country I've been into much. As I said before, I've not been to too many places in England, I will admit. I think it's only Newcastle, Manchester and London I think I've only been to. So I will need to add more on my list as well. Sue Moon's taken many: Ireland, Dorset, Norfolk, 2 weeks in Scotland from the Highlands to the Lowlands, and last year in Northern Ireland. Very nice indeed. Nice to see a lot of Scotland as well, all the way up into the Highlands as well. There's more to Scotland than Glasgow and Edinburgh, so very nice to be able to see all that as well. And we'll do one more for the time being. Jo has taken a holiday. She's just coming to the end of my 2 weeks annual leave and have sneaked out to a few places relating to my ancestry, going back to Rotherham tomorrow to the Minster Open Day and coming home via Coinsborough Castle and my great-grandparents' grave in Ardwickly Street. Very nice. I'm not sure if the comment has been cut off there or so, but very nice indeed. Jo, nice that you've just been away as well. I know it is about that time of year where a lot of people are going away, hence why I am flying solo today as well. A lot of people are on holiday doing different things too, so glad that a lot of people are just coming back as well. I've not been anywhere myself recently, I will admit. Weather-wise, just not up for it. So we're planning somewhere further afield, get some sunshine later in the year. I thought staying in Dundee would give me the sunshine this time of year, to be perfectly honest, but turns out I'm going to have to go further afield for it. So I will get a trip booked. I am going to Belfast next month, so it's not too far from where my family are from. So technically a family history related trip, I suppose. Always nice to be back in Ireland as well. And just some clarification on Matthew. I will admit I wasn't entirely sure. I guessed it was Record Office, but the WS, I should have known, but WSRO was the West Sussex Record Office. Thank you very much for the clarification on that one as well. Good stuff. So you may remember that a while ago I did a question of the week, which was asking sort of if there was anything that you would like to see covered on a Friday's Live, any categories, any record sets, any segments, any tutorial, things like that, that we could maybe do for you that you would like to see. And I was having a look at the list this week for today's session, and I noticed that quite a few people mentioned travel and migration records. So I thought I would do a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I will admit it's not necessarily too deep into any particular type of record, but as I say, it's just going to cover off 2 main ones, one little nice one at the end to finish up on as well. But 2 sort of the main travel migration records, I would say, certainly some of the more popular ones I see when I'm speaking to customers. So I will cover off those 2. Got some information about the record sets, some things that you could try next if you're using these record sets. And I'd say there's a fun little one at the end too. But if there is maybe either one of these you want a deeper dive into, or there's a particular location or other travel migration record set that you've maybe seen, aren't entirely sure of, that you would like covered, do let us know in the comments as well. And I can keep that in mind for a future session. I was going to do this week in history, but I checked the calendar and there wasn't a great deal happening on This Week in History. So I've done the travel migration as well, but I will certainly be keeping an eye on the This Week in History because I do really like that idea. But as I say, this week, we're going to be having a look at some travel and migration records. So yeah, as I say, this was one that quite a few people mentioned as a sort of category or a type of record that they would like looked into in a little bit more detail. So as I say, I'm going to cover off 2 record sets here, a little bit of information about them. But before we look at the record sets themselves, just to look at how to actually navigate your way to these records and to these search pages as well. So you may know that when you click search at the top of the page, you've got all those various categories that come down. And one of the categories is travel and migration. And if you click on that, you will be taken to the sort of initial search page for travel and migration. If you're looking for something a little bit more specific, a little type category of record set, you've got that section on the left-hand side there, like the migration, naturalizations, passenger list, for example, which will be sort of a more specific search. And if you're interested in the types of record sets which are either included in one of those subcategories or indeed just travel and migration as a whole, you've got the browse record set function on the search page as well. One thing I would recommend doing if you are looking at the initial travel and migration search page, depending on your default setting, I always change it to world, and mine is obviously set to Britain for my kind of default when I'm on findmypast.co.uk. But if before clicking the browse record set, you change the location to world, you'll just get a bit broader as well, especially when it comes to travel records. You could have the passenger list leaving the UK with their naturalization record in America. That would be a British record set and an American record set. So it's nice just doing it as they change it to world, and you'll get both of them coming up in the browse record set category. Or of course, you can use the all record sets page, as I mentioned every single week probably, to have a look. If you pop something like travel in the all record sets search page, you'll get a list of the record sets as well and can access a more specific search page as well. And those search pages, pardon me, are the ones which I am using in the screenshots here. Pardon me. So the first record set, probably one of the more popular ones, certainly one of the main ones that you see coming up when you're doing a search in the travel records, is the passenger lists leaving the UK 1890 to 1960. Quite self-explanatory record set title. These are just passenger lists from ships which were departing the UK between that time period, going to all sorts of different locations around the world. If you do know exactly where the ancestor you're looking for was going to, you do have extra things like destination port, destination country, also departure port as well. Personally, when I'm searching these records, I would tend to kind of leave that as broad as possible. For example, someone from Scotland may have left from Glasgow, they may have left from Liverpool, Southampton, the kind of main ports. So you just don't know. So as I say, certainly for your initial searches, I would start using your first name, last name, your year of birth, etc. as well. If you do already have quite a lot of information, you're looking for something quite specific, as I say, you've got those options. You've got things like the ship name, the departure year as well. As I say, it really just depends on how much information you have from the offset. So once you've done your search in those records, you will get your transcriptions and your images in these ones as well. And as Karen, perfect timing, has said, check the actual image as well, as a journey index is usually a whole trip ship. You need to look at your ancestor's own journey embarkation exactly. So yeah, as Karen says, the ships may have stopped at different locations, might not have been the ship's destination port, might not have been your ancestor's destination port, for example. So always check the images, and there's some really good information in some of the travel images as well. But first of all, looking at the transcription. So I always like to think that the transcriptions for these records are like quite handily sort of split in two. So on the left-hand side, you've kind of got like your key information about your ancestor themselves, things like their name, their year of birth, or how old they were when they traveled, a marital status, the date of departure, their occupation at the time, where the ship was going. This one was leaving Liverpool for Quebec in Canada, for example. And then on the right-hand side, you've got that sort of extra little detail, things that might not be entirely relevant to your ancestor, but really nice little things to know. Things like the name of the ship, always good The size of the ship I always find interesting, the shipmaster's name, how many other passengers were on the ship, how long the voyage was as well. I think that's always something that's nice to know. It kind of puts into context as well just how long some of these journeys actually were. It was 24 days from Liverpool to Quebec apparently, so I'd be interested to know roughly how long that would be these days with a more modern ship. Of course, this one was, what, 1905, so over 100 years ago now. But as Karen said, always be sure to check the images as well, where you can get some extra little information. This one is the image for George Baker. He's the one at the top there, so you can see things like the occupation that was mentioned. The age can be a little bit trickier to find sometimes because it's split into like English, Scotch, Irish, foreigners. So always hard to double check sometimes, but always make sure you're double checking that. And you can get some information as well if, for example, their nationality is different to what you maybe thought. And then the right-hand column is kind of what Karen was saying about the port at which passengers have contracted to land. So he was indeed going to Quebec, but as Karen said, the actual journey that the ship was taking may have stopped in different places, so their departure may be different to the ship's final destination. Now, as I say, there is some really nice information on the initial transcription and the image as well. But when you're looking at the transcription, if you scroll down the page slightly, just underneath the transcription itself, you will get a section that looks like this. And this is a really nice thing to have. I think it's a really cool addition to the transcription. So you'll get a little bit more about the journey itself. So, for example, the ship was called the Southwark, and you'll get how many people were on the ship. And if you were to click that See Who They Were button, that would take you to a search which lists everybody that was on the ship. So you can kind of try and identify if there's any friends or relatives that you maybe know the names of on there. But when it comes to the actual last name of the person you're looking at, that side of things is already done for you to an extent as well. You'll get, might not be all of them. You might need to click that See Who They Were to get a full list, especially when you're thinking about a surname like Baker, for example, not too uncommon. So have a look there. But as I say, might not always be listed on the same sheet of the passenger list for various different reasons. So double check that people with the same name on this voyage. See if you're identifying any potential relatives. Check to see who they were. See if they went with friends or in-laws, for example, as well. So a nice little extra feature to have on those records too. So say you'd found one of your ancestors on one of these passenger lists, say George Baker was your ancestor, he was going to Canada. What kind of things would you look for next? So these are some examples. They might not apply to every destination, so it does just depend. But typically speaking, if, for example, we're talking about George Baker, things that you could check next, you could go to things like the Canadian census records. Quite a lot of the kind of US and Canadian censuses as well have little sections about migration in them too, maybe how long they've been in the country, where they were initially born and things. So it can be quite helpful to identify your ancestors when you are looking at the censuses. See if they were on any birth, marriage, death, or parish records, especially with George Baker. He was single when he left, so every chance he got married in Quebec, Canada when he initially landed there. We also have naturalization records too, which is what I would definitely like to talk about in a later session as well. I think I've briefly mentioned them when talking about one of my own ancestors before, but that is essentially the person becoming a citizen of that country. Like the American ones are really good. I found pictures of my ancestors in there as well. And newspapers as well, newspapers on both sides of the journey. You may have newspaper articles at home talking about people leaving the country, going to a new country. And also on the other side, in the destination country, you might have articles about ships arriving or certain groups of people arriving in the country as well. So newspapers, always a good one to check as well, where available. So that is record set number 1. Just noticed in the comment that Eileen is saying that the picture is blurred. So let us know, make sure I'm still audible and visible. If I am having any issues, I do apologize. I will crack on, but as I said, I do apologize, Eileen. Hopefully I am okay elsewhere. The second record set that I wanted to talk about as well was another quite popular one that I see a lot of people searching when I'm speaking to customers, and these are the Australian convict ship records from 1786 to 1849. So these are people who have committed a crime in their home country and as part of the sentence are being sent to Australia, excommunicated to Australia. So again, as I mentioned, this is the search page that you will get from the all record sets page. So it is a little bit more detailed than you would get from perhaps the initial travel and migration. This one is a good one to use, especially if you know that the ancestor did commit a crime and you know the kind of details of that, because the things like the place convicted and the county convicted, country convicted even, can be really helpful in the search there, especially if you're looking for a kind of common name or anything like that. That's a really nice little additional search field to be able to have and can really help narrow down your results too. So definitely use them via the all record sets page. As always, that is search at the top of the page, all record sets, and then you can search for something like Australia convict ships and get to that record set, or as I mentioned before, just pop in travel and see what comes up. So again, we have transcriptions and images for these records, which is always really nice, especially the image I'm about to show you. Some really, really good information on there as well. But first of all, just looking at the transcription. So this is one for a Mr. John Docherty, who was only 15 actually. So these records can be a little bit heartbreaking at times when you think about a 15-year-old boy from Ireland being sent all the way over to Australia as a result of a crime that he committed, which you can see details of on the images themselves as well. But you get things like, as I mentioned, the place and the county, the country that the conviction was occurred in, the year that they arrived in their country, and also the ship name as well. And then when you look at the image, as I say, there's some really, really good information on the image here as well. So John Docherty is the one at the top. And as I say, you got some really, really nice information about there. Things like, can the person read or write, a religion, marital status, children, where the boy was actually from. So although he was convicted in Derry, he was actually from County Donegal. And you can see the offence as well. So 15-year-old John was convicted of sheep stealing, and as the sentence was convicted to be sent to New South Wales, in this case in Australia. John, as I say, is single, cannot read or write, so does not have any children either. But if you look at like Michael Drury, for example, the one at the bottom of the image there, you can see like he's got the R in the reads column because he can read. He's married, he's got 4 male children, 2 female children. So just extra little bits like that worth looking out for, as Karen said. And as we always say, always make sure you are checking the image when available. And then this document itself is 2 pages. So there's a left and right side page. And the right side page is also full of really amazing detail, especially more about the person themselves. So not only do you get things like the sentence, so John was the top entry, so he was sentenced for 10 years. You also get things like former convictions. So he had already had a conviction in the past. You can see that person 2 rows below him there, quite a few convictions in the past. But as well as that, you'll also get some really nice detail about the person. So we know that John was 5'1". He was of fair complexion. He had fair hair, blue eyes, and also the particular marks, scars, and remarks category as well. John has a small mole in the back of his left cheek near the ear, but you get all sorts of things mentioned in this category as well. You can see we've got more scars, we've got freckles, we've got crooked noses, even monobrows. I found that quite funny when it said that the person below him, eyebrows partially meeting, and then the person below him, eyebrows meeting. So some of the kind of prison records, convict records will have images available, photographs of the person available. But without them, you're getting that description of the person and just picking up some really nice extra detail on the person themselves. So again, you found one of your ancestors in these record sets. Where would you go next? So we do have birth, marriage, and death records from New South Wales, for example. It would be worth checking. But there are also 2 record sets which are quite closely linked to this particular collection. And if you are using the all record sets page, these will be linked in the useful links and resources section on the right hand side of the page. So first of all, we have the Australia convict conditional and absolute pardons. So that would be if the person was pardoned of their crime, for example. That's where you would find the details of that. And also the New South Wales Register of Convicts applications to marry. So on the search page for that record set, there's a lot of really nice information just underneath, same as the other two record sets and any other record set for that matter. If you're on the all record sets page and you find the search page for it, have a look at the kind of useful links section just underneath that, and the useful information section as well, I should say, because that's where you'll find some descriptions of the records, a little bit of the history behind it as well. So some good information in there. When I was reading about the applications to marry, it said that people being convicted and sent to Australia were actually encouraged to marry, which personally I found quite strange. Like, we're sending convicts to Australia and we're actually encouraging them to marry, which, as I say, came across a little bit odd perhaps, but that also kind of tied into the pardons. I think that kind of, if you got married, it made look like you were making an effort to sort of settle down, so to speak. So quite a lot of people did marry there, especially when you've got someone like John, who was only 15 when he went to Australia and was obviously single at the time. Every chance that he maybe is included in those records. But also in the information about those records that I was reading, it said that as well as people being encouraged to marry, it said that people also who were already married, so even like Michael Drury, who was married and had children, he may also appear on the applications to marry, because when they were sent to Australia, there was obviously no guarantee that they were going to be home again, they were going to see their wife and children again, so maybe they thought they would best just leave that behind and find a new wife, a new partner. Obviously males and females were transported to Australia, so a new partner in there as well. And some of them also thought that as a result of being sent to Australia, that kind of anything in the old country was kind of annulled, so their marriage didn't really count anymore. So they thought they may as well just remarry again, whether, as I say, they thought it would be annulled automatically or they were being encouraged to do so. Also, crime records in the home country is worth having a look at too. Obviously, these people are appearing in these records because they have been convicted of a crime. So particularly for the Britain and Ireland side of things, we've got a lot of good crime records, court session records from these places, where you will find more information about the incident itself, about the sentencing, the dates, more about that side of things. So definitely check the crime records in the home country. And of course, we are talking about a crime that has been committed, so the newspapers is worth a look as well, because a lot of these crimes will have appeared in local newspapers, whether when they occurred or maybe about the court case itself as well. So always worth a look in the newspapers as well. And yeah, that was the convict ship. So we've got some extra detail on these records before I move on to the last one. Last one's quick, so don't worry, I will let you all go by 5 o'clock. It's just one I could not include in today's session because one of my favorites. So Matthew's saying that they needed to populate Australia. That's why they sent the convicts. This is probably the same. Encourage people to marry so they can populate the land. Very good point indeed, Matthew. Absolutely. And then, like you say, marriage results in children, results in farm labor, different things like that as well. So yeah, very good shout. And Karen just double recommending that Australia and New Zealand have strong privacy rules for BMD. So for more recent records, need to look at newspapers, including Troves and Findmypast. So yeah, if you are looking at the newspaper side of things for when they were in Australia, that is a good place to find your sort of family notices in there as well. And as I say, I've got one more record set. As I say, it's not as detailed about them. It's just a little bit something different, something a little bit more fun. And as I say, one of my favorite record sets on the website, albeit one of the smallest, only 18 record sets, only 18 records in this record set, I should say. And these are the passenger ship posters. Can't remember if I've spoken about these before, but as I say, there are only 18 records. And again, you will find them through the all record sets page. And these are just the sort of posters that your ancestors may have seen that entice them to go on one of these journeys. All sorts of ships included in these, and some really fantastic posters as well. That's one on the right hand side, for example, but also as well as the poster themselves, there is an accompanying transcription which will give you more information about the poster, just a description of the poster, especially for these ones, kind of a bit more of the translation, where the ship is leaving from, where the ship is going. So as it is a small record set, so cannot guarantee you will find your ancestor's ship on them, but it would be a really cool thing to have if you can find a ship that your ancestor traveled on or as I say, it's only 18 records. I personally would recommend just having a look at them, flicking through the posters and having a look, because as I say, some really, really cool ones in there. That's one example. And I've got 3 more of my favorites on the screen at the moment as well. Different ones. I think there was 2 Italian ones and then a German one in the middle. Just really nice imagery, really nice old sort of posters. And as I say, potentially some of the posters that your ancestors may have seen that entice them to take some of these journeys. And as I say, just a bit more of a fun one to end on, as opposed to the convict ships and the passenger list as well. But that was the end of the segment about travel and migration, so I'll take them off the screen. So as I say, that was something that was requested when I asked if there was anything that people would like to see on these sessions. So if you enjoyed that sort of brief overview, or as I say, you would like a deeper dive into either one of those 2 record sets or any other travel sets, or indeed any other category of records, do you like the kind of brief overview of a few different things in one category? Would you like a deeper dive into anything, any particular countries, for example, as well? Do let us know in the comments as well. We've still got some time. Let's have a look at what I missed. Glad to hear the technical issues were not wide scale anyway. Anne saying that she found her 2 times great-grandfather in newspapers as well as the travel records, following mining jobs in Borneo, Indonesia and Ghana. Very nice indeed. As I say, nice checking the travel records and the newspapers as well, especially when it comes to things like the job adverts and things there. So let's have a look and see. Karen saying that she would like will, probate and electro registered. Very nice. Yeah, good shout. We can definitely add that one onto the list as well. We've got a running document with suggestions for future sessions, so I will add that one on after the session here today. Let's see. Joe is saying, surprised you didn't link football into today's session. You know, there's maybe opportunities in there. I found a footballer in the passenger lists, but I'll bear that in mind for future, Joe. I know you like the football chat, so I will bear that in mind. Wills and probates, I'm sure I could find a footballer in one of those records, so I will keep that in mind for you. As I say, I know you're asking for it there, so I will definitely keep that in mind. We're obviously come to the end of the Women's World Cup as well, so I hope everyone has enjoyed that. And begrudging congratulations to the England team as well for making the final. It was a really good match that I watched the other day against Australia, so well done to everyone involved. And best of luck, I suppose, he says begrudgingly, no, as a Scotsman. And Sarah saying that, thanks, Liam, good to see records I haven't used yet. Yeah, exactly. It's nice to, as I say, see something different that maybe you've not had to use yet in your records, in your research. And nice for me as well. I tend to learn a lot about different record sets when I'm doing things like this. I, as I said before, only really have one ancestor that went overseas. So I've not had a great deal of use for these records. So nice to kind of have a dive into them as well. And as I said before as well, wills and probates that Karen has mentioned, not something I've used a great deal myself either as well. So good stuff. So Victoria saying, always loved any trick to search quicker, especially if you have a common name. Definitely one I can add on to the list as well. And Gina looking for records of shoemakers. I will write that one down. I've not come across any shoemaker specific ones, but I know we do have your like occupation records, for example, quite a lot of the trade and profession section too. So I will definitely have a look into that one for you too. Just going to take an awkward little second here, because as soon as I close the session, I'll lose the comment. So I'm just going to write that down. Will, probate and surname, so I can get them onto the list. As I say, always nice to hear your feedback as well. If you do have anything you would like to see more of in these sessions, then do let us know as well. Nice to switch up a little bit as well, do something different for us as well. As I say, I'm still a big fan of This Week in History. I just need to get a more exciting week in history, so definitely one I will be keeping an eye on. And Victoria saying she does have bootmakers in her family, so maybe you can link up with Gina and see if you've got any suggestions for her as to where you found those records. Just going to have another quick look at the question of the week, just in case we have missed any as I went in there. I think we'll finish on this one from Karina, something we can all relate to. Family history holiday is on the bucket list when I win the lotto. I like that when, not if, when. Fingers crossed, Karina, it's coming, it's round the corner. Australia to Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Cornwall, England, Norway, and Sweden. That would be some trip. And if you'd won the lotto, you'd be living the high life as well. It'd be first-class travel, 5-star hotels, Michelin star restaurants. So, as I say, fingers crossed for you, Karina. And as I say, I'm a big fan of the optimism when you win the lotto. As I say, something we can all relate to, something we've all dreamed of at some point or another. But yeah, that is more or less bang on. And did you notice I didn't say today's going to be a short one? I knew myself that today was going to be a long one, so I didn't even mention that it was going to be a short one because, as I say, I had a funny feeling we would be pushing it close to 5 o'clock by the time we got through David Garrick, the Welsh papers, and the travel and migration section as well. But that will wrap up today's session. So as I say, fingers crossed the weather brightens up for us all. Just had a quick look there. No sign of it for myself, so fingers crossed for everybody else that it is brightening up and you all have a fantastic weekend. Of course, if it doesn't bright up, you've got plenty of records in there to get stuck into over the weekend, so no excuse now. But as I say, thank you all very much again for joining me today. I will see you all in the comments soon. I think I'm back probably in about 4 weeks' time or so again, so I will see you all then. But as I say, I will speak to you all before then, I am sure. But thank you very much again. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will speak to you all very soon.